Hi, I'm Rebecca Bangs, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the style of painting that I paint in, which is called Pointillism. And Pointillism is basically something that was popularized by Georges Seurat, and the idea being that, sort of based in science really, that if you have two colors that are next to each other on a canvas and then you step away, your eye and your brain are or eyes and brain are gonna work together and basically blend that color for you. So from across the room, you'll see it as green. Or if you have green and yellow next to each other, from across the room, you'll see it as a yellowish green. And that's something, that's something that a lot of people ask, what style is it? Now, my style is a little different in the sense that Seurat liked to use figures as well as tell certain stories of the time. My pieces are really more inspired by nature. That's the kind of thing that just makes me stop in my tracks. It makes me pause. It's the kind of thing that inspires me to paint and brings me peace and calm. So it's the kind of thing where I figure that's what speaks to me, and so that's something that I want to share with the world. The other thing that's different about my work is I have all those really nice, wonderful modern colors, and I love to use them all. So a lot of these pieces are really bold and bright, at least when you're up close. Now, when you're across the room, they actually look fairly normal. The other thing that a lot of people ask is they ask, how do I make the dots? And here I'm using another little sort of scientific thing between the eyes and the brain, in the sense that I use little squared off brushes and golden liquid acrylic paints. And when I make that square mark, what happens is the liquid paints sort of ooze a little bit, and the edges soften, and your brain from across the room likes to generalize and say, oh yeah, that's a circle. And so that's how I make the marks. And it's really easy to load up the brush with some paint and get about 10 or 15 dots out of it. So I'm not doing this the whole time, so it's not quite as maddening as a lot of people might think. The other biggest question I get is how long does it take to make these paintings? And interestingly enough, again, sort of some science-y stuff behind it. It's really a dot size to surface size ratio. I usually like to get about 6 to 8 layers of dots on here, and it takes a pretty consistent amount of time. So for example, this piece right here, it's about 4 hours a square foot. If I were doing a little 6" by 6" but much tinier dots, that would be about 4 hours just for that little piece. So it does take some time, but I think maybe not as much time as a lot of people think. And here's the other trick too, and it's another sort of eye brain kind of tricky thing. But I actually I sort of do successive dots. So the first couple of layers are actually much bigger dots, like the size of my thumb. And that's really to kind of block in the general color, make sure I'm okay with the composition and such. And then another 2 layers on top of that of sort of a medium-sized dots. And then I'll follow it with about, anywhere from 3 to 4 layers of much smaller dots. And so that's what keeps it from being totally maddening, really. So those are the big three questions I get about these Pointillism pieces.